Hi everyone, I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team, and let's begin with a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We have received more than 1,000 registrations for this event, and it is my absolute pleasure to host this webinar in collaboration with Debra Ruh and peopleHum. peopleHum has grown to be a channel of choice for leadership thought and has collected a library of material and interviews conducted over time from some of the most well-known names in the industry. Today, we have the opportunity of welcoming the top global minds to our panels, people who the industry and the world follows for their thoughts and knowledge. They represent some of the best in the industry for talks, consulting, and coaching assignments, and each one has multiple accolades, including books they've written or people and organizations they've worked with. We are here to discuss the theme of changes in work, the workplace, and the workforce in these pandemic times of uncertainty, for which we have the global team here with us today to share their thoughts and opinions. And now for introducing the global team to you. First, we have David Perez. David is a leader, advocate, social media specialist, and communication strategist. He has experience in public policy implementation, development, and evaluation, as well as consultancy services for NGOs like UNESCO and others linked to the European Union. And he's representing Latin America today. We also have Antonio Santos. Antonio is the co-founder of the Digital Transformation Lab and the community manager at ATOS. He's passionate about digital inclusion, social media engagement, diversity, future of work, and social business, and he would be representing European Union today. We also have Neil Milliken. We have Neil, who is the Global Head of Accessibility, works in Business Disability Forum Technology Task Force, and has successfully instigated the adoption of and implemented the Accessible Technology Charter for the United Kingdom in his association with ATOS, and he's representing United Kingdom today. We have Debra Ruh. Debra is an inclusion strategist and global leader and has worked with countries, UN agencies, national and multinational firms all over the world, helping them create strategies that fully include persons with disabilities. And she's going to represent the United States of America. We have with us Himanshu Saxena. Himanshu is the CEO of Santos Strategic Mindset. He works at the intersection of strategy, execution, and executive coaching to influence change. And with CEOs and top teams in shaping their growth agenda. He is also part of the top 100 Marshall Goldsmith coaches in strategy, and he will represent India for us. And we also have Reeta Nathwani. Reeta is executive coach and managing director at Atom Global Consulting. She has over 27 years of experience in consulting, covering a range from leadership development to talent management strategy. She believes that the transformation happens at a personal level, followed by the team and then the organization. And she would be representing Southeast Asia for us today. I'm also very, very thankful to our panel moderators that include Lamondre Pough. Lamondre is the Chief Sustainability Officer for Ruh Global Impact. His dedication to helping people unleash their personal potential has quickly established him as the primer speaker and trainer. He believes that in order for an organization to be at its very best, the people who make up the organization should be at their best. And he would be representing USA for us. And finally, we also have Ryan Hope. Ryan Hope is the CTO at Covium Technologies. He has a track record of leading highly performing development teams to deliver successful products to market and create valuable companies. I'm very excited to be associated with peopleHum and peopleHum and Debra Ruh for this event today. We're expecting a spirited and engaging conversation with our panel. So without further ado, let me pass this on to Lamondre. Lamondre, over to you.
Thank you all so much. And it is an honor to be in front of this panel today. And here's some notes on how we're organized today. I've got 6 topics for discussion. And to get started, we're going to start with each panel member, and then others can jump in once the first response has been made. We will cover 6 questions in 45 minutes and leave 10 minutes for questions we received from the hundreds, and I mean hundreds of people who are listening to us online right now. And for those attending, if you need to ask a question, just use the chat channel, and an instruction email was sent out to you for reference a couple of days ago. And to our wonderful audience, We will also be conducting flash polls before we can take our questions and before we take our questions after the debate. So please help us with your views so that we can understand your opinions and the world around us in a much better way. So if we're all set here, let's go ahead and get started. Brian, you ready?
I'm ready. Everyone else ready? Let's go. So this first question is for Reeta. What are some of the things that your country, Singapore, is doing or should be doing to increase the response to the crisis that others can learn from? I think talking about and learning from what not to do is as important as what we can do.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending upon which part of the world you're joining us from. I'm really delighted to be on this global panel talking about the most important thing that we're all facing with around the world today. So here in Singapore, as some of you may be aware, that Singapore was quite early on during this pandemic by the World Health Organization, was given a gold standard in terms of how Singapore was handling everything, in terms of keeping the numbers down, making sure there was sufficient amount of testing happening, etc. Unfortunately, that didn't last for too long. Maybe we were overconfident and the numbers in Singapore had started to go up like crazy. Having said that, some of the things that Singapore have done which have really, really helped currently is one of the countries which least number of fatalities since January. And what we're doing really, really well is the fact that the contact tracing in Singapore is, I think we've got it down to a T, to be honest. So I'm going to give you an example. During the pandemic, whilst everybody else called it the lockdown, can't go out, etc., Singapore played a psychological ploy for the Singaporean nation here, and they called it the circuit breaker. So people didn't feel that closed in. Singapore government, and that was Prime Minister Lee himself, ensured that everybody had to go and exercise and really focused around the immunity building aspect during this crisis. Having said that, coming back to the contact tracing, so where I live, I go for a walk on the beach every day, and we've actually got contact tracing poles even at all the parks in Singapore. So you would have to, even if you're going on the street just for a walk, you have to tap in on your phone that you're out on the street, and when you enter back, you have to tap back in. Now, I think that that really, really helped us a lot. The other big thing that Singapore has done is, I would say, in terms of digitalization. So every person in Singapore gets 2 WhatsApp messages a day, every single day. And I'd just like to share with you, like, for example, what today's WhatsApp message actually says to us, or just to give you an idea of how communication has really, really played a huge, huge part here in Singapore. So we get told things like new cases, 123, imported cases are 2, cases in the community are 11. It even breaks it down. Singapore is a global nation, so it even breaks it down. Singaporean 1 work pass holder, 1 permit holder, residing in dormitories, because Singapore has a lot of workers. So residing in dormitories, 110. It even then gives you, it breaks down to say 93% of them are linked to different clusters. So Singapore has formed the different clusters. It then gives you activity of cases. So we have in the hospital, 183. And then in brackets, you have 0 in ICU, community facility. So, I mean, in terms of providing the information, it's been absolutely fabulous. I would also say that one of the other big advantages that Singapore really did do is very, very close monitoring. So again, coming back to when people go for walks, it was instigated you had to go for your walk by yourself. If you were found chatting to somebody, you would get fined. it created a whole army of volunteers, Singaporeans, who were actually patrolling all of the public places to ensure that if two people found actually speaking, then they would get fined, they would get a visit at home, and they were charged, they were actually charged for that. What not to do, and this might sound a little bit odd to people, is as the lockdowns open up, or in Singapore's case, as the circuit breaker opened up. So we had one phase of circuit breaking, now we're on phase 2 of our circuit breaker. Yeah. There is zero tolerance and no leniency in terms of going out there, being on masks. So if you'll go to buy the groceries, for example, you'd have to go into a mall. You will have to check in. You'll go to the grocery store, you check in again. You come out of the grocery store, you check out. You come out of the mall, you check out again. The other piece, again, on a very positive way of handling COVID, the whole country were given reusable masks. Not once. They were all given them once, and then they found a better model of a mask, a reusable mask. So the whole country were then again given reusable masks. And if you didn't go and collect your masks for your home, you would actually get a WhatsApp message from the government. Wow. To say that your mask is actually waiting there for you.
That sounds like some significant countrywide coordination. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
And I think it would really go from, and it's right from the top, right from the top. So yeah. the number of times the Prime Minister of Singapore has actually addressed the nation. His messaging in 4 different languages. So I truly feel blessed that I am based in Singapore and living out of Singapore, even though I believe myself to be a true global citizen. So it's great to be on this panel.
Sounds like a great success story.
Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely, it does. And so our next question is for Debra. The virus does not discriminate, but some groups are more severely impacted by it than others. Which ones do you see are at a social and economic disadvantage, and what are the reasons behind it, Debra?
Yeah, and thank you so much, and thank you to peopleHum for doing this. And I'm going to keep my answer a little tight because I know we have a lot of panelists, and we want to make sure everybody gets to speak. But I also don't want to go after Reeta Singapore talking about this because pretty much the United States is doing the exact opposite of what Singapore is doing. And so I'm not going to go there because I think everybody knows that. It's very, very confusing in the United States. Some of our leaders think that we're number one in not dying, but actually studies show that we've had more deaths in the world. We're the 4th largest. So, but there's a lot of different reasons why our communities, our disenfranchised communities, our diverse communities, the intersectionality of all of our different communities are suffering a lot more. And that's because of all of the problems that we have in the United States. It is interesting listening to Reeta and how smart and clever they are in Singapore, because they always are so clever in Singapore. But a lot of things they're doing in Singapore would absolutely not work in the United States. We would be totally offended that our equal rights were being taken away from us, our First Amendment rights, and all the things that we're all fighting about. And I'm glad in a way, even though it's horrifying, that we are doing this because Black lives, brown lives do matter. And I know that we're going to have other webinars to talk about this, but we have institutionalized racism in the United States, and we've done it from the minute that we started. I have Cherokee blood, just a little bit of Cherokee blood in my ancestry, and there were 200 million indigenous Americans all over America when Europeans came, the Spanish people came to the United States. And by the time that was all done, there was only 60 million. And that's all of the Americas. So there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of, we don't provide equal education, there's poverty, there are all kind of different reasons that why there are certain types of the population suffering more than others. And it's pretty dramatic. We've seen our African Americans going into our emergency rooms and being sent home saying, no, you just got a cold. No, you got the sniffles, when actually they have COVID-19. We are not making testing a priority. We're not making contact tracing. All of the things that they're doing in Singapore, we're not doing in the United States. We also are making this about politics. We do have a very important election coming up in November. I know who I'm voting for and who I'm not going to vote for, and we won't go there. But what we're seeing is all of the problems that we hid under the covers coming out now. Somebody said they're going to clean the alligators out of the swamps. Well, that's exactly what's happening. So all of those problems, and the good news about America is that we do believe that we should all be equal. Most of us do believe that Lamondre is right as an American in South Carolina. He is as important as I am, and so what you're seeing, the chaos in the United States, some of it is just for us fighting about our human rights. And when our Secretary of State recently said, or maybe it was our Attorney General, that, well, why don't we back off on some of those human rights? This is not the time to start backing off on human rights. Everybody matters, community matters, locality matters, but we also need to get a little bit smarter about doing right things like they've done in Singapore. So thank you, Lamondre.
Thank you, Debra.
All right, so this next one is for you, Antonio. So my right to decide if I wear a mask versus the collective social responsibility of controlling the spread of the virus. What are your views on the split of that opinion, and when does individual freedom become a hindrance versus the situation where the collective scores over the individual freedom and choice? And how has your country been able to respond to the virus in a way that is positive, and what can we learn from that?
I think on the early days of the pandemic, people were a little bit confused about the mask, wear a mask, not wear a mask. Particularly, there was some advice from the World Health Organization that were a bit contradictory, and then country-wise, people were there was medical authorities say yes, you should wear a mask. And then there were government authorities say, no, maybe you shouldn't do. But I believe that at the time they were doing that because there was not enough masks for healthcare professionals. So they were trying to find ways where people wouldn't just go buy masks and then they wouldn't have enough for those professionals. And then while things start to evolve, mask has become something natural that everyone should use to protect others. No, this is not about you. This is about your responsibility to make sure that your neighbor doesn't get infected, that the elderly person that you are going to contact in the street doesn't get infected, that the person that is providing you a service at the supermarket can stay there and keep her job while you go there and she's serving you. So there's a strong element of personal responsibility on your side. And I think here, everyone is understanding that aspect, that is particularly important for you to act as someone that can protect others to make sure that they can continue to serve you. Otherwise, a supermarket might have to close down and you are not going to be able to buy food because you just infected someone because you were careless not wearing a mask. And that the same applies for public transport and other areas. I think here, almost everybody understood that you need to wear a mask from the moment that you are in a place where you are in contact with other people. I don't think anyone is questioning that. I think everyone feels that as a kind of a personal responsibility, and there's not really an argument about wearing a mask puts my liberty at risk, because in fact, wearing a mask protects your liberty. That we see that in the other way around.
Interesting. That sounds like a very good approach. David, how has that played out in Costa Rica where you are? Is there controversy there, or is that a fairly standard way of operating now?
The only controversy that we've seen here is the fact that it started as just a recommendation and that then it became like a law. Everyone has to wear a mask wherever they go. So some people are arguing that if it's not effective, why are they requesting it? If it's effective, why didn't they request it from the beginning? But most people are just doing what they have to do and wearing the mask as much as they can. We know it's not 100% effective, but we know it's a way to protect everyone. Costa Rica's healthcare system was built on solidarity, and that's what we have done to try to protect ourselves from the COVID-19.
Great answer. Great answer. So let's go to Himanshu, and we're going to talk a bit about culture. Now, some cultures, like we heard Reeta talk about Singapore and South Korea, Germany, New Zealand, and Japan, notably seem to be dealing with the pandemic much better than the others are. And is this just a factor of leadership or a discipline mandates and a clear vision that is the difference? Or are there other factors that are actually at play here?
Thank you, Lamondre, for keeping the longest question for me. I love that. Okay.
We knew you could handle it.
These are very interesting countries and are being led by some excellent leaders. But that is not to allude that other countries' leadership is suboptimal or incompetent. It's not fair to pass on the judgment without understanding the context. But first, let's understand what favors or supports these countries' position in their fight and triumph, if we may call at this point of time, against the pandemic. See, no doubt it is leadership always will stand out in the bailout scenario. I think a very fast and swift appreciation of the situation or this rapidly spreading pandemic got their attention much earlier than expected. I think leaders of these countries, they visualize that this is not a small thing. Rule books for these do not exist. So let's not go and search for the rule books. Let's create the rule books as we are facing now, and let's be creative about that. These leaders were quick to reprioritize their priority and put their money where it was needed most. That could be testing, contact tracing, and isolation measures, all put in place swiftly. But this every country did in some proportion. But what's really stood out is the communication and the education. Both were pieced together, handled very well, marketed with creativity, and problems were repurposed as significant challenges, which kind of became a vision for the society and community. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand said that, let's save others. So he said, we are a team of 5 million people, and I'm with you in this mission to save others. A very simple logic. If we are on a mission to save others, we will save ourselves. But see how the communication was repurposed and packaged. See, culture, in my view, is a manifestation of many things. Of course, civilization, literacy, or better referred as education, values in terms of self-accountability and personal responsibility. These kind of problems cannot be handled through an enforced mechanism. We need to spend more time in teaching and educating people that how you could take care of yours by doing certain things right, but not as an enforcement. Values that stood out, nation's pride or pride of people in their nation and as a society. How some of these leaders were evoke the pride of the nation. The mission became that, can we be the first country to come out of that? And when New Zealand declared that, you could see the pride in people. See, culture is also influenced by prosperity and poverty both together. Sometimes poverty triggers survival instinct and everything goes for a toss. Extreme prosperity, to hell with the word and policies. So we are seeing different parts of the word. So I think the median is a great place to be, and that's where the middle class values and bit of education comes handy. This is where the role of leadership again becomes super critical. Leaders who communicate authentically with transparency often end up soothing nerves. And this kind of situation needed that someone's nerves need to be soothed. I'll take the example of India. We made millions of migrant laborers move. For what? if somebody had calculated the economics and cost of keeping them where in a safer condition, we're providing food, everything, these millions of people would not have gone and infected that. But a complete anarchy at that point of time. Then there's a wave of lockdown that followed and a wave of unlock is following. Now there's a lab in India, it's called ThyroCare, and they did some fantastic study based on the testing and integrating the findings of all the labs. They came up with an idea that India is going to be the fastest to develop antibodies. Now, we don't know in this long game whose policies, whose game comes at triumph. But this is another perspective that, and sometimes I joke around that we'll have more people quarantine, more people traveling outside who already develop, and less are those quarantined who do not have that. You never know, that kind of situation may exist. So culture brings a sense of discipline, Lamondre, and a discipline that begins in every house, more as a self-respect rather than an external threat. Because it's a symbolic of culturally evolved society and epitomized by top leadership. Just to conclude, incidentally, culture too is a transient stage. Some extremely rich and civilized society known for heritage and culture have now become insipid. On the other hand, some considered very primitive and impoverished are a shining light in their own world. Culture works at the best as a median between extreme poverty and inadequacy. Let's not ignore the size of the country. There are problems, and a country like India, on one side, we are having this huge problem of population. On the other side, we are fighting a war in China. Look at the leadership, what conflicts they are facing. So size, scale, scope, everything matters. But these are countries which really stood out in terms of high personal responsibility and high social accountability, and hats off to the leadership for having pioneered that. Lamondre.
Himanshu, thank you for such an insightful answer. And I think that it's so interesting, particularly when we're talking about how many different facets actually come into play there. So thank you. Thank you very much. Ryan?
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Himanshu. That was very interesting. Neil, our next one is for you. When fear is rampant, it's usually people that need special care under normal circumstances who suffer even more: senior citizens, differently abled, and others. Do you think accessibility and care provisioning was severely impacted during the pandemic? And what more could have been done to help?
Absolutely, it has been affected. We've seen, certainly in the UK and the US, significant numbers of excess deaths in care homes. And by excess, what we mean is the death rate being higher than the average number of deaths that you would have in a given year. So the fact that in both countries we've sent people from hospitals into care homes where people are vulnerable has exacerbated the problem. So we've not covered ourselves in glory there. And lots of people have probably died unnecessarily as a result of some of the decisions that were taken. In terms of accessibility, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So a lot of people with disabilities have been saying for years that we want flexible working and that we can work from home, and that's been something that has been difficult to extract out of some of their employers. COVID-19 comes along, suddenly everybody's working from home. So we've disproven the theory that it's not possible to do it. We know it is possible. So that's a real positive. That said, people are working from home in situations that are not normal. So what's happening, and I think there was a question on the web chat that was talking about this, are we taking into account the fact that people from poorer backgrounds, from the economically less advantaged backgrounds, are able to work from home? Sometimes there's not the space, there may not be the facilities, there may not be the connectivity. So as a result of that, either people are forced to go into work, they're forced into poverty because they can't work, or they're forced to take greater risks. So being, you know, part of the comfortable middle class with a nice sit-at-home job and a good fast internet connection, I can stay relatively safe. Lots of other people can't, and so we're again exacerbating that economic divide. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. And then finally, even where there is flexibility, and this means not just in terms of sort of having the IT tools to do this, but also the management mindset to allow people to be flexible, to trust them to be able to do their job, so that we're not trying to control, you know, which was the driver of presenteeism for a long time. There is still this problem that we have where people don't have the long-term setup, so they're working from home on a couch, balancing, you know, 2 kids and a dog, and trying to do multiple things. So it's not working from home in a normal context because they don't have a normal office. So we're potentially also setting up all kinds of problems in later life for people unless we start sorting out basic stuff like ergonomics. So as companies start to take advantage of the fact that they've realized they don't need all of this office space, what are they doing in terms of helping their employees set up their own home spaces in order for them to remain healthy and fit whilst working from home, and have a working environment that doesn't create undue stress? Because I think actually a lot of the time, especially when people are all cooped up together, working from home could be very stressful. So I think there's a lot that we can learn. There's a lot that we still need to do, because actually this situation is not going to resolve itself very soon. So organizations like Twitter, where they're giving people a lump sum to start making changes, I think that's the beginning. What we may see, certainly in richer nations, is investment in your home office working environment, and people will start to actually restructure their living environments to take into account the new ways of working and so on. That again creates a divide, and we need to think about how we can bridge that gap.
Excellent, thank you, Neil. Debra, you look like you have some passion along these lines to talk about the inequities that have come out of this. What are your thoughts on the subject?
I totally agree with what everybody's saying. It's very interesting to watch the countries that maybe some of us thought were leading the way in the future, and see those countries, like my beautiful country, just falling down and just, you know, militia on the street. It's just chilling to watch what's happening. But it all does go back to, even though, and I'll back up for a second, even though this is, I've never ever walked a path like this. I've never seen so many people having mental health problems. Suicides are way up. Domestic violence is terrible. And this is not just in the United States. We're seeing this all over the world, but certainly looking at it from the lens of the United States is chilling. But we've been preaching, Neil, Antonio, and I run a tweet chat. It is 5 years old, called Access Chat, AXS Chat. And we talk about this every single Tuesday. And we've been saying it's very important to make sure that technology is fully accessible, that we have connectivity, that we have good technology, that, you know, all the different things that, as Neil noted, if you're, you know, middle class, you get to work from home. I mean, I was working from home before this, but it is chilling to see how the positions that we've put people in just get worse and worse and worse, and exasperated during these times when, like, you were talking about India, and when everybody was sent, go home, that just exposed more people to that. So the leaders need to be a little bit more thoughtful, and we need to consider, you know, what problems we're really trying to solve. And I think that's part of the problem, Ryan, is that we didn't solve the problems that we knew were in society. We've known these problems have existed for a long time. In the United States, we're number one when it comes to incarcerating Americans. We incarcerate more Americans in the United States, and disproportionately, they are Black and brown. And they also are people, 65% of our prisoners are people with disabilities. And so we're warehousing people in nursing homes and in prisons, and guess what's happening? They're dying. So I think, Ryan and everyone, what we're seeing is all of these problems with society that we've just been hoping would go away and not really addressing. Now we're seeing those are the people that are the most negatively impacted. And I think we really, as just talking about the US, I'm talking about as human beings, we could do much better. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Those are great. Both of those were great statements from Neil and Debra. And I believe what we found is that there has been this is an opportunity for a reawakening, for a shaking of the way that we see the world. And it allows people who typically have been disenfranchised and left out, really now will have the opportunity to stand up if we as a society move in that direction. And I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that we will. So our next question is for David. David, what systems, processes, and behaviors can we change to live with or to avoid such an occurrence in the future?
Well, I think that avoiding is a very hard thing to do, if not impossible. I think that we know another pandemic is going to come and we need to prepare for it. There's absolutely no way in the globalized world that we're living in and how connected we all are right now that there's not going to be another disease that spreads to a pandemic level again. So what we need to do is take lessons from COVID, what it has done to our economies, what it has done to our healthcare systems, and start implementing solutions that are long lasting and that can actually have an effect for everyone. That, of course, includes investing in research and preparation. We need to invest more in our doctors, in our researchers that are trying to keep us safe. We need to fund and continue to implement vaccination programs for the diseases that we already know that exists and we have a cure, right? Because a healthcare system that is healthy is more able to respond to a pandemic or to focus on a crisis when it appears. And I think the most important thing that we can start to do is start to address the inequalities that we have as a society across the board. When I was hearing our first panelist answer, and she was saying that they gave masks to every single person in Singapore, that's amazing. I would love that we were able to do that here, but there are economic factors that prohibit Latin American countries to do that. But there's also the fact that we don't even know where people are. We don't know how to communicate with them. There are communities in Latin America that are completely invisible to the government. They don't exist. So we need to start by changing that, by finding people, giving them their basic needs, giving them what they need, so that when a crisis like this comes, we are able to respond in a better, more equal way. Because right now, I'm sure that most of you can agree with me, the people that are taking the biggest burden of this pandemic are the poorest people across the world. And
Absolutely.
That's simply not fair. We can do better. We have the resources. We have been talking about sustainable development goals for a while. I assure you that there's people out there that are dying of hunger. They are dying of stress. They don't know how they're going to be alive for the next month. And governments are just asking them to stay inside because we don't want to overwhelm the system. So yeah, we need to do better. And I think that the best way to prepare for another pandemic or to prepare our systems is going to be to bridge the gap in inequality.
Great answer, David. But I would also like to hear from Reeta regarding, was there any mention or conversation about the economic drain that providing those masks twice would have presented to a particular government, or to Singapore for that?
Yeah, so there definitely was. At the same time, the messaging in Singapore was very much that lives matter over livelihood. at this point in time. And that was a constant message, that lives matter over livelihood. Singapore government, again, it also made sure that it was looking after the small businesses, it was looking after the freelancers, like the hairdressers, like the foot massage people, and ensuring that money actually reached their bank accounts. So these people were, so it was really, really focusing on people who were, you know, not economically secure for themselves, and that really was an emphasis. Whilst we are talking about this and hearing David speak, I'd just like to add one point in terms of the pandemic and everything that's happening around the world. I think there is also a flip side. I think the consciousness of people has really risen to the fact that everybody's been in their homes, and people are beginning to get a different perspective on what really matters, how little one actually really needs. And one of the biggest things that people thrive on is we thrive on human interaction. And so maybe the outcome, I would personally hope, would be that human beings had become human doings. We were all in organizations doing. And now having to literally reflect in our homes, yes, working to the best of our capability, but really realizing that it's actually the being that actually matters. So, you know, and I'm certainly here in Singapore. I was speaking to a colleague in Vietnam earlier today, which again, Vietnam has handled this very well. And it was the same conversation that, you know, we really are. This individual works for a major financial services organization. And they were saying, this is the conversation that we're having. That, okay, so yes, we're chasing our numbers. Do we really need those numbers? And can we actually do more for the society around us? Thank you.
Thank you. Do appreciate that. Ryan?
Excellent. So thank you very much, panelists, for the questions that we have. We've got some other questions that have come in from our audience, and that some we got from emails and on social media. Would appreciate it if you guys can all stick around and help us with some of the questions here. We've also got a quick poll that we're going to be doing here. Okay, so the first one I see here is from Deepak Joshi to Himanshu. In January 2020, we prepared a business strategy for this decade, 2020 to 2030. We know that the first 400 meters in the marathon are the most important to run the 26 miles. And here, due to the unprecedented pandemic situation, we have lost out in the first 400 meters. So any advice to keep the teams motivated and maintain the rhythm?
Yeah, so I think most companies' strategy went for a toss because it's pandemic. And the earlier they dumped, the better they felt. Because holding on to something which is not working is not the way. I would also like to say that after every crisis, the world has bounced back, whether it's World War I, II, Bretton Woods, or whatever the scenarios. And there were some leaders who were thinking not just about the crisis, but beyond crisis. And they were having that bifocal vision that, okay, one eye is to handle how best we handle that. But one eye is based on this too shall pass. Are we preparing for future? How much time from our bandwidth do we take out to see when the bounce back and the recovery happens? Because, you know, in this world, the greatest competitive advantage is how long you can think. You can just price them out or time them out just by sheer nature of thinking long. You have an example of a guy, Jeff Bezos, who invested in a 10,000 years clock with millions of money. He says, I am looking at 300 years. And it's not about me whether I will be there or not. But after 300 years, where our great-grandchildren, when they look back and they say, okay, there is somebody who thought of us way, way ahead into the future. Coming back to the point of employee morale and motivation. Future always holds hope and positivity. It depends on how well we package the future, how do we paint the picture of future, how we bring that hope and say, okay, guys, there are some basic procedures and protocols. If we can live that, we will survive. One of the things which I'm talking about in various programs is preserve, reserve, and conserve. You have to preserve your health, both emotional and physical. You have to conserve your energy for a greater leverage. You have to reserve your assets for leverage when things are bouncing back. So I think it's leaders' ability to think way into the future and then paint that picture of vision that will lift the morale and spirit of the people.
I think that sounds like a very good idea. Okay, our next one is for you, Antonio, from Joa. The use of social media and video conferencing apps has gone up significantly. Do you think this streak will continue even after the lockdown is over? How do you see the new habits continue into the future?
Probably we'll see things going down a little bit, considering that some of us might return to work, but we'll definitely be continue to use video more than in the past. We are going to use this more frequently. We have seen organizations making remote work as part of the normal work activities, where people have the option to choose: will I work from home? Will I work from the office? From the perspective of the employee, so I can decide today if I go to work or if I stay at home. And if I'm staying at home, I will have to use those video solutions in order to be able to communicate. So we will see them becoming more normal in our daily lives, in the way how we work. But but making a point to some of the thing that Neil was saying, is also particularly important that these solutions are also accessible for everyone. So from captions to subtitles, to integrate accessibility within these solutions in order to democratize access and remote work. Because what's the point of having them if we end up creating a scenario where only those that can afford the solutions, only those who have the knowledge, are able to work from home. So it's particularly important that we make the effort to make sure that the solutions that we use are also accessible for everyone. And if we are successful on that, I think that can also open employment opportunities to make the workplaces more inclusive.
Excellent, good answer. The next one, Neil, is for you. This is from Leonard. Mental wellness has become the talk of the town. Shelter in place, work from home has aggravated it furthermore. Do you think the negativity is arising out of anxiety or depression, or is it just that since we're not able to step out, it's causing a ruckus in our minds?
I think there are multiple factors at play here. So every individual has their own personal preferences. Some people are extroverts, some are introverts. So I know that there are some people actually relishing not having to interact with people. Certainly amongst a number of my autistic friends, they're like delighted that they don't have to interact with people so much. On the other hand, most of us are social animals and we like to interact with people. I know that it's not the same having a Zoom call as it is meeting up and having close proximity with friends. So I miss that, and I think that does have an impact. For me, as someone that's used to working from home, I have my wife here, and I still talk to people. I'm not terribly isolated, but it's a draining effect. Again, when you factor in things like job insecurity, financial insecurity, those kind of things, the nervousness about health and so on, then that's also going to have an impact on your mental state. So I think that all of these factors at play are adding to people's general state of tension. And collectively, as a society, we're noticing that. We're seeing all kinds of stuff happening. We've got geopolitical pressures that were already there. We've got all of the sort of the various swings between extremism, because we are more polarized as society right now. So that is adding to anxiety. There's all kinds of stuff happening that we're right to feel a little bit nervous, and we need to be kind on ourselves. So we need to forgive ourselves for not necessarily feeling at the top of our game. As the saying goes, it's okay to not be okay. And we need to find ways of helping each other, being prepared to listen intently to people, because actually when you can unburden yourselves, I think it's really helpful. So being able to share your concerns and your fears is really important, and being able to do that for someone else is also really important. So take the time to listen to people, take the virtual coffee breaks, the virtual water cooler stuff. Yeah, because we really do need to do it, and hopefully someday soon we can do that over a real glass of water, or preferably a real glass of wine. That would be my preference. You know, it'd be really nice to go and see friends again, but whilst we can't, let's just do it virtually.
Sounds good. Okay, this next question is from Sophie for you, David. Let's see, in terms of accessibility, how can we bridge the gap between sympathizing versus actually employing differently abled folks, especially now when everybody is having a hard time finding a job?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. I think it is very nuanced, and I think it depends very much on where you are in the world, how your economy is looking, what types of jobs are available, and a myriad of different factors. It's, of course, a matter of will as well. If companies put their best foot forward and they actually try and do the right thing with real inclusion programs that are not just blabber, there's a big possibility for real inclusion in hiring programs across the board. And it's not about giving opportunities to those that don't have them. It's about making opportunities equal for everyone. And that's what we're trying to do. We're talking about inclusive hiring programs. So the best way is to champion it yourself, to take the lead yourself. It comes from one person, it permeates a whole organization, and that organization starts making change. That's how the best way that we've found to actually make change.
Excellent. That sounds like very practical advice. Let's see. The next question that we have here is for you, Debra, from Ricardo. Technology has empowered us now more so than ever before, but senior citizens still find it hard to access technology, and communication is an issue during these tough times. What do you think can be done to help them bridge this gap?
And that's a great question, Ricardo. Thank you, Ryan, for asking it. You know, one thing that I'm seeing, and I am one of those older people, I'm 61 now. And what I'm seeing is that our elderly populations all over the world, it's almost like they're being blamed because technology doesn't work for them, because they don't have good connectivity. More and more I hear elderly people saying, well, I'm just too stupid to use the tablet, or I don't understand how to use the phone. And so the children of the people that are trying to make sure that their parents, their elderly parents, 65 and on, are not getting COVID-19. And sadly, there's so many stories like this, but a friend of mine's mom was in a nursing home, or I should say not a nursing home, she was in an assisted living facility, and they stopped visiting her. They just stopped visiting her for weeks and months, and for no reason. Of course, we all know they stopped visiting her because of COVID-19. They were trying to keep her safe, but she couldn't use the technology. She didn't understand. It made her feel stupid. It made her feel incompetent. And finally, she just gave up. She stopped eating, she stopped drinking, and she just died. And they were just mortified. But we see this happening over and over and over. I know Lamondre's grandmother died of COVID-19. It is chilling what's happening to our elderly, and technology it's such a great equalizer, but only if we get it into the hands of the people of the right connectivity, and it's accessible, and we're teaching them how to use it, and we stop telling older generations you're stupid because you're not a digital native. And so there's bullying happening with our elderly. Oh, go ahead, you just die. Or elderly people saying, like the lieutenant governor in Texas saying, "Oh, I'll take one for my grandchildren. I'll just die right now." No, so I think once again, it's like what we've all been saying. Neil said it, David said it. You know, all these problems are being mixed into all of this. So as we're sent home and said, "Okay, y'all figure it out," the elderly people are dying. They're, you know, and certainly younger people are dying from COVID-19 as well. But the misinformation, the fake information, the fake news, we don't even know where to turn. I hope other countries feel more comfortable. And you look at your leaders and say, all right, they're giving us information that's going to keep us safe. But we don't feel that way in the United States. We feel like we're being lied to. We're being, you know, all kind of other things are happening that we don't understand. And it's putting pressure on everyone, but on our elderly, they are in so much trouble. And once again, our disenfranchised, our brown, our Black lives. So it certainly is taking a look at your culture. COVID-19 is making us take a look at our culture and see what is wrong and what's really wrong behind the covers. So that's a great question. Once again, technology can be a wonderful equalizer, but only if we really truly get it in the hands of the people that need it and we teach them how to use it in a way that makes sense to their brains. And I'll give you one quick example. My mom has passed over, and I must say I'm glad my mom's passed over and she's not walking this right now. She would be so scared. But my mom could not swipe her phone on because she had real severe diabetes and she just didn't have the finger sensitivity. So what my mom thought was she was stupid because technology didn't work for her. My mom wasn't stupid at all. My mom was very smart, but technology and the way we bring it to people, that was what had failed. Thank you.
Thank you, Debra. All right, our next question, Reeta, is for you from Poonam.
Yeah.
What should companies do for the mental well-being of their employees?
Right now, I would say a quick and easy would be to really create programs around mindfulness, well-being, and active listening. Because if we feel that people are stuck on screens, not being heard, still having to perform, I seriously would say that if we do something around mindfulness, which is going to reduce the stress, connecting it with the new, so people think, oh, my company is now just wanting to fob me off on something, but really showing the neuroscience behind mindfulness of how the different hormones, when we start being in the now, when we even just put a smile on our face, we get our serotonin, dopamine flowing through our bloodstream, and what the impact of that actually is. So even a simple thing like, I would say, you know, start a meeting. It doesn't matter whether it's a strategy or business meeting, whether it's reporting numbers Q1, Q2, whatever it is, but to actually just start the meeting by asking everyone, hey, let's give our best smiles to all of us.
I like that idea.
And see what
Absolutely.
happens just even now on the screen, right? See, you know, it really lifts. So maybe it's something as simple as that, Poonam. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is for you, Himanshu. How are employees in India managing the work from home or hybrid working arrangement models? Knowing employees in India may not have the luxuries at home that allow flexibility to work from home.
Great question. Firstly, the number of people who have moved to home and work from home is bigger than any country at this point of time by sheer virtue of the size and the population. I think it doesn't matter as long as you just manage one laptop or a bit of internet connectivity. People and managers are getting used to that. It's okay if your child walks in and somebody cries as a whistle of the pressure cooker, it's all getting accepted. And managers have to do a great job in assuaging it's okay. Nothing to get worried. There's no judgment, no guilt, no expectation. Okay, so that kind of inspirational or exhorting message, if it comes to, I think people are going to be fine doing that. And my relatives, my cousins, niece, nephew, they just have stopped bothering what place they are. They're just finding a little bit of place. Somebody sitting in a staircase, and somebody is sitting outside. In fact, in our 100 coaches, Peter Bregman came up with a very fine video where he's working and suddenly his daughter walks in, Dad, I need this room. Then he goes to the stair and somebody else walks in. He says, I need this place. He goes to the toilet and somebody knocks it. I need to come in. Finally, he goes to his car and starts working. And everybody comes and joins him. They thought they're going for a trip. And then he rushes back to find his place. So that's on the lighter side. I think, and I'm talking about large organizations like Tata Consultancy Service, 400,000 people, 70% are working from home, out of which 150,000 are the lowest associate level of people. Now, just imagine the logistic nightmare these companies have undertaken successfully to move within 15 days. You know, same people would say, oh, you're not authorized because at this level laptop is not there, a desktop is not going to be made available. This is a new world. And everybody worked around and moved around to make things happen. And it's working fine. So this is going to stay. And this needs to be accepted. This needs to be accepted with grace. And that's how it will happen. Ryan.
Thank you very much, Himanshu. Great insights. Okay, I think our final question today is going to be for you, David. This is from Lana. Being resilient and flexible as a leader, how would you go about teaching that in a crisis for an organization that is trying to get through the pandemic with as few scratches as possible? The question is about ensuring that resilience and flexibility in leadership gets taught appropriately.
Well, that's another great question. I think that resiliency can only be taught by leaders with example. And I think even though it might be hard to deal with something that we have never dealt with across the world and in such a massive scale might be hard, I think that communicating that to your team is going to make a huge difference. Letting them know that this is uncharted territory, that you're doing your best to be there for them and to make the right decisions, to not get anyone hurt, is going to be the best way to actually have people trust what you're doing. And that way your team is going to have peace of mind and they're going to be able to do that with their teams. Leadership is a chain where if we are doing the right thing, our people are going to be doing the right thing. But if we're saying one thing and doing another, yes, our teams are just going to grab what we are doing, not what we are saying. So yeah, we need to lead by example and teach what we actually can do. And since I have the luck of being the last one, I just want to leave everyone with a with a great Greek proverb that I've heard and that I think sums up everything that we have been talking about here. A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall never sit. We need to do things now for the future generations to prepare them for the future that we know is coming and just to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a great way to end.
That was a very nice.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, David. I had a great time listening to all the very engaging questions, responses. Thank you for being so responsive. I'm really also thankful to our panel members and to Lamondre and Ryan for accepting our invite and for the high energy, engaging talk, especially from you, Debra. I'd also like to thank all of you individually for your support leading up to the panel discussion. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Thank you so much to all the attendees here, and we hope to see you back on our show again. On behalf of our audience on peopleHum and all over the world dialed into this panel, thank you so very much. Stay safe and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
It's been a joy working with you.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for the great questions, everyone.